Good morning and welcome to our abnormal psychology. So we are dealing with the stress, the second unit. Very important chapter. It is everyone's experience, stress. And we have said in the last class that stress is a result of both inside the body and the outside the body factors. There can be two factors which might cause stress to the individuals. So it is a result of inside the body factors and outside the body factors. And this stress is our mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined threat, event or change. So these are the stresses. It can be a threat, can be an event, or it can be a change in one's life which might bring about stress in our lives. So threat, event or change, they are called stressors. Threat, event or events and changes. Sudden changes, drastic changes, dramatic changes, unexpected changes in one's life might become stressors for the individuals. So stress is the result of both inside the body factors and outside the body factors. Inside the body factors, inside the body factors. Or outside the body factors. Outside the body factors. What happens within might cause stress, or what happens outside oneself might also cause stress. So they are called stressors. So inside the body factors and outside the body factors. We shall see little elaborately. So, and this stress is our mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined threat, event or change. So this is important. Threat, event or change. So our mind and body's response. Our mind, both are involved. Mind and body. Mind and body's response or reaction. Our mind can respond or react. Our body can respond or react. Our mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined. Can be real threat or imagined threat. A real event or imagined event. A real change or imagined change. So stress is our mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined threat, event or change. This threat, event or change can be either real ones or imagined ones or imaginary, imagined. So that is understanding. So our mind and body's response or reaction to real or imagined threat, event or change is called stress. It's a simple definition of stress. So this threat, event or change are commonly known as stressors. This threat, event or change, they are called as stressors. Something that puts me under stress. Something that puts us under stress. Threat, event or change, they are called stressors. Something that causes stress, stressors. It's very important to understand this word, stressors. What are the stressors? It can be a threat, it can be an event, or it can be a change. And this threat, event or change can be real ones or can be imagined ones. And that is how our mind, our body respond or react to a real or imagined threat, event or change. It's called stress. It's a simple definition for stress. So now we can speak about two kinds of stress. Coming from derived from this definition, we can speak of internal stress and external stress. Internal stress and external stress. So stressors, can speak about stressors. Stressors can be stressors. can be internal, that is inside the body, internal, that is to do with our mind, or it can be external. Internal factors or external factors. Internal and external. So our stressors can be internal or can be external. And what are these internal stressors? Can be internal means can be thoughts, our beliefs, and attitudes. Our behaviors, our actions. So everything that comes from within, that is internal stressors. So stressors can be internal and stressors can be external. So when you say stressors can be internal, it implies or it includes thoughts, our beliefs, and our attitudes. And stressors can be external. That can be loss, external stress. A loss of someone, we have seen it in the last class also. The loss, tragedy, personal tragedy in one's life, or a change, some dramatic changes, life changes, significant changes in one's life. A marriage, having a newborn baby, new work, or having something new in one's life. Changes in one's life, change in lifestyle, change in the way of one's living, that can become a stressor. They are known as, they can be classified as external stressors, outside the body experience, or outside the body factors. They are called external stressors, or can be inside the body factors. They are internal stressors. So the internal stressors are our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes, and the external stressors are the loss of someone or loss of something, tragedy, personal tragedy in one's life, change. They function as external stressors. So we have internal stressors and external stressors. That is inside the body factors and outside the body factors. Okay. And when stressors come from outside of ourselves, we can talk a little more about that. Outside the body factors or external stressors. Stressors that come from outside of ourselves or external stressors that can be, this is the same. Outside the body factors are external factors or external stressors. They can be physical, can be physical stressors, it can be social, it can be organizational, and this can be personal. So these four come under this outside the body factors are external stresses related to these three. The physical, what do you understand by physical? Means a kind of noise, heat, or technology. There can be physical stresses, some noises, heat, the environment outside, or it can be technology that can cause stress, use of technology, overuse of technology, that can be a physical stressor. Then there is social, aggression that you experience outside, no? Aggression, anger, or animosity. They are social stressors. Aggression, anger, animosity. And there can be organizational, the place where one works. heavy workload, the demands to meet the deadlines. They are organizational stressors. Workload, too much of work to do, workload. Some people work day in and day out. Too much of workload, deadlines. The work has to be completed with such and such date, so there will be a lot of pressure for the person to meet the deadlines. So pressure from inside, the organizational stress, the workplace, mainly related to the institutions and organizations. Too much of workload and too many deadlines to meet, so that become a stressor for the person. It will put the person under extreme stressful situation. And there can be also personal stressors, which are marriage, illness, promotion, newborn baby, marriage. Some examples: marriage, okay, these are related to personal life. Marriage, having a newborn baby, it's another stress to handle the situation at home. Newborn baby, or it can be a sickness in the family, sickness in one's personal self, sickness for the self. It can be a promotion. Some promotion comes and immediately the person is under stress because he or she might find it difficult to cope up with the new situation, or the promotion, or new work, a new job, new responsibility. So these are common external stressors. We said generally they are loss, tragedy, or change, and they can be subdivided into physical stress, social, organizational, and personal. The physical, we have some example: noise, or heat, or technology. The social, we have aggression, anger, animosity that person experiences outside the society. Or there is organizational or institutional. There we have heavy workload, or the demand to meet the deadlines to fulfill the task at hand. And can be personal stressors: marriage, newborn baby, sickness to the self and to others, promotion, the new responsibilities that are given or entrusted. So these are the stressors that come from outside of ourselves. So we have basically a stress inside the body factors, and there is also outside the body factors. So we can call them as internal stressors and external stressors. Internal stressors are basically our thoughts, our beliefs and attitudes, and external stressors are basically loss, tragedy and change. And these external stresses are further subdivided into 4 categories: physical, social, organizational and personal. And we have examples for each of these categories. So this is stress in general. So stressors can be both internal and they can be also external. And now let us also see a little further about this inside the body factors. Just as we have elaborated the external body factors, let us see a little briefly about the inside the body factors are internal stressors. Internal stress, inside the body factors are internal stressors. Internal stressors. Internal stressors. Internal stressors. That means they are inside the body factors. Stress from inside ourselves. Some reasons could be desire to perform well. Desire to perform well, be it in the workplace or in studies or any given responsibility. There is a desire from within to perform well. That also put the person under stress. Desire to feel in control of the situations and circumstances. That can be also stress. A desire to be in control of the situations. Desire to be in control of the situation. To be in control. To be in control. To be in control of the situations. So when I want to control everything, put everything under my control, that can become a stressor, because it is not always possible to have everything under control. So person will be under stress because of this desire from deep down to keep things under control, to keep the situations under control, to keep the circumstances under control. Situations. Then there is also attitude and outlook on situations. What is my attitude? What is my outlook on situations, circumstances, people and things? So that also might act as internal stressor. Attitude and outlook. Attitude and outlook. What is my view or my perspectives about things, persons, situations, circumstances? Attitude and outlook on situations. Situations. The way I perceive the reality, the way the individual perceives the reality. And fourthly, there is also personal choices that come under internal stresses. The personal choices, the choices that the person makes for himself or herself. Personal choices. We always have the freedom to make choices. Based internally, we are free to make choices. So that personal choices might also lead the person into stress. These personal choices could be diet, regarding our work, the time frame of our work, can be also some addictions, mainly alcohol and drugs. They are personal choices. Due to diet, the person decides for himself or herself diet, the workload, the working time, working overtime. Working overtime. Can be also alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs. Alcohol, H-O-L, alcohol, H-O-L. Alcohol and drugs. So these are personal choices. Can be related to our diet, working overtime, whether to work overtime, that's a person's choice. And there is kind of addiction, mainly to alcohol and drugs. They are personal choices. And they are considered as stress from inside the body factors. Or inside the body factors are internal stressors. Desire to perform well in a given situation, in a given responsibility. A desire to be in control of the situations, circumstances, people and things, which may not be possible always. And attitude and outlook on situations. What is the person's attitude? What is the person's outlook on situations? Their attitude and outlook on situations. And finally, there is personal choices regarding one's diet, regarding whether person can work overtime, and there is also kind of addictions, mainly alcohol and drugs. So they are considered as internal stressors. So we have seen both the internal stressors as well as the external stressors. We will come back to it again to this point. It's very important for us to understand the stressors. Because when we understand the stressors or identify the stressors, we will be able to deal with the stressors or cope up with the stressors. If you are not able to identify the stressors, whether they are external stressors or internal stressors, or what are the things, or what are the people or events or changes or tragedies which puts us into stress, we will not be able to deal with the stress. We will not be able to manage our stress. That's why it is very important for us to understand the stressors. What causes stress? There is a person called Wayne Dyer. He says, you can't always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what goes on inside. Very beautiful saying. You cannot always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what goes on inside. It means our response is always a choice. We always have the choice to respond to different situations. What happens outside of ourselves, it's not in our hands, but how we react or how we respond, that is our choice. So things are always can be under our control, I mean what comes from within. So you can't always control what goes on outside, the environmental factors. We have no control whatsoever, but you can always control what goes on inside, what goes or what comes from within. That is the saying of Wayne Dyer, a beautiful saying indeed. Let us again go back to the definition of stress. We have been defining stress in different ways. Now, to sum up all our definitions, let us see the root word of this stress. It comes from the Latin word stringy. Stress comes from the Latin word. The root Latin word is stringy. Stringy. It's a Latin word stringy, which means to be drawn tight. Stringy means to be drawn tight. To be drawn tight. When the person feels that he or she is drawn tight, that might be considered as stress. So stringy means to be drawn tight. That is the Latin word. So in medical terms, what is the definition for stress? A physical or psychological stimulus that can produce mental tension or physiological reaction that may lead to illness. That is the medical definition. Medical terms, stress in medical terms. Stress in medical terms. It is defined as or described as a physical or psychological stimulus. Stress is physical. So always connecting both mind and body. We have been seeing from the beginning there is always a mind and body coordination, mind and body collaboration. So whatever happens in mind, it affects the body, and whatever happens in the body will have its impact on the mind. So that is what we understand by physical or psychological stimulus. Physical or psychological. Physical or psychological stimulus. Physical or psychological stimulus that can produce mental tension or physiological reactions. So there is a physical or psychological stimulus that can produce mental tension or physiological reaction. Mental tension related to mind. Mental tension or physiological reactions, bodily reaction. That is physiological reaction. Physiological reactions, bodily reactions. So that is the medical definition. Medical terms, stress is described as physical or psychological stimulus that can produce mental tension or physiological reactions. So physical and psychological, my body and mind. Now physical or psychological stimulus, something that stimulates from outside or inside, that can produce mental tension. When this stimulus produces mental tension, mental pressure, or it can produce physiological reaction, tensions in the body, sickness in the body, that reaction is called stress. Reaction that may lead to illness. Reactions that may lead to illness. That may lead to illness or sickness. So that is the medical definition. So stress is defined as or described as physical or psychological stimulus that can produce a mental tension or physiological reactions that may lead to illness, that may lead the person to illness, that may make the person sick. So that is a medical definition. So there is a mind and body correlation, mind and body coordination. So according to Richard Lazarus, another important personality, he gives his definition. It is a medical definition, mind body coordination or correlation. According to Richard Lazarus, Richard S. Lazarus. For him, stress is a feeling experienced when a person thinks that the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. Means when there is a lot of demand, personal demands and social demands, and we have got the resources to handle the demands, and when this demand exceeds the resources that the person is having to mobilize or to deal with these demands, then that becomes stress. So that is his definition. So the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. So whenever there is a stress, we have got the resources. Either we have the personal resources, we have the social resources to deal with the stress, to mobilize the stress. And when this demand exceeds our resources, that becomes the real stress. So that is the understanding of Richard S. Lazarus. So stress for him is a feeling experienced when a person thinks that the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. The demands exceed means go beyond, exceed the personal and social resources, exceed the personal and social resources, personal and social resources, personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. The individual is able to mobilize, So the stress according to Richard Lazarus for him is the demands, when the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize, that becomes a stressful moment for the person. So we have got the resources, personal resources, the social resources. When the resources are not able to meet the demands, or in other words, when the demands become more than the resources that are at hand, that becomes a stressful situation for the person. So that is the understanding of Richard S. Lazarus. I repeat the definition. Stress is a feeling experienced when a person thinks that the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. So when the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize, that is stress for that person. Another person called Hans Selye. He speaks about good and bad stress. He says stress need not be bad all the time. Stress also can be good. It can be a positive stress. It can be negative stress. It can be neutral stress. So stress has got three different facets. Hans Selye. Selye. So he speaks about positive stress, negative stress and neutral stress. Negative stress and neutral stress. Neutral. So stress need not be always negative. Stress need not be always bad. There is also something called good stress. So stress is not necessarily something bad, according to Hans Selye. This person, Hans Selye, he says stress is not necessarily something bad. It all depends on how we take it, how you take it. The meaning that we give to the stressful situation that makes the stress either as good or bad or as neutral. He says the stress of accelerating means exciting, creative, successful work is beneficial, while that of failure, humiliation or infection is detrimental or damaging. So if you are having a creative, successful work that is exciting, that becomes a good stress. Or if you are having a failure or humiliation or something that is damaging your personality, your image, then that becomes a bad stress. So whatever is productive can be a good stress, and whatever is destructive that becomes, or damaging, that becomes a negative stress or bad stress. So stress can be therefore negative, positive and neutral, or positive, negative and neutral in the understanding of Hans Selye. So stress is not always bad. Now let us come to the most important aspect, that is the factors, the stresses which you have already seen. Now we will see in a very classified manner. What causes stress? What causes stress? That is our next topic. What causes stress? What causes stress? As we said earlier, if you do not know, or if you are not able to identify the stressors or what puts us into stress, then we will not be able to cope up with the stress, we will not be able to deal with the stress, we will not be able to manage with the stress. So for the effective stress management, we need to have a clear-cut idea about what causes stress, what are the possible causes for the stress. In other words, what are the real stressors? What are the physiological stressors or psychological stressors or internal stressors or external stressors? We shall see them little elaborately. So many different things can cause stress. What causes stress? What causes stress? It's a question. What causes stress? So many different things can cause stress, from physical to emotional. It can be a physical stress, basically physical and emotional, external and internal, physical and emotional. Physical and emotional. Physical and emotional. Physical means such as fear of something dangerous. Physical related to fear of something dangerous. Fear of something dangerous. When I look at something outside which is very fearful, because it is dangerous, that becomes a physical stressor. Or emotional means worry. Worry about something. Worry about the family, worry about one's personal life, worry about one's loved ones. So worry over one's family or one's job or one's personal things. Worry about one's family, job, etc. So it is fear of something dangerous which I see outside that create fear, physical. Emotion means worry about someone's family, job, or personal life situations. So these are basically two, physical and emotional. Physical stress or emotional stress. So identifying what may be causing one stress is often the first step in learning how to better deal with one's stress. So identify the stress, then deal with the stress. So first we have to do identify. Identify, understand, and deal with the stress. Deal with the stress. So we need to identify the stressors, understand them, and deal with them. So these are the steps to be followed in terms of stress management that we shall see little later. Now we shall look at the common sources of stress. So what causes stress? So we can look at the common causes of stress. Common sources of stress. Sources or causes of stress. What causes stress? Common causes. Common sources of stress. Common sources of stress. What are the we have basically four common sources: survival stress, internal stress, environmental stress, fatigue, and overwork stress. So these are the four common sources of stress: survival stress, survival stress. Secondly, internal stress, thirdly, environmental stress, and finally work due to fatigue and overwork. Fatigue, tiredness, mental tiredness or physical tiredness, fatigue and overwork. So these are the four common sources of stress. We shall look at them, each of them. Fatigue and overwork. So these are the four common sources of stress. So the first one is survival stress. What is survival stress? Survival stress. You must have heard about this famous phrase, fight or flight. That is survival stress. Fight or flight response. Fight, I face with a difficult situation, a difficult stimulus or dangerous stimulus. I either fight with it or I take a flight to escape from it. So that is survival stress. Basically, we all want to survive, be it in the animal or in the human beings. There is always this basic, inherent, inborn tendency for survival. So that is fight or flight response. Survival stress. Fight or flight response. That is common to all the human beings and animals. There is an inborn tendency. So this is a common response to danger in all the people and animals. It is the response, fight or flight response is common to all the humans. If you are a normal human being or even the animals, common to humans and animals. So fight or flight, it's a common response to all the humans and animals. So when we are afraid that someone or something may physically damage us or hurt us, our body naturally responds with a burst of energy. So when we sense a danger outside, our body produces energy, burst of energy, so that we will be able to survive the dangerous situation or escape it altogether. That is called survival stress. So when we are faced with a dangerous situation, a dangerous object, a dangerous circumstance, immediately our body responds with a burst of energy so that we will be better able to survive the dangerous situation or escape it altogether. So our body produces a burst of energy. Body produces burst of energy. Burst of energy. It comes from nowhere when we are faced with a dangerous situation, and that energy will help us either to face the situation or to run away from the situation. In either case, we are protecting ourselves. So this energy will help us, will enable us so that we will be better able to survive the dangerous situation or escape it altogether. It will help us to survive the dangerous situation. Survive the dangerous situation. Or escape from the dangerous situation. That is what we understand by survival stress. Escape from the dangerous situation. Dangerous situation. So we have two kinds of response available. One is fight response or flight response. It is common to all the humans and animals. So whenever we faced with a dangerous object or dangerous situation, our body produces bursts of energy, and that energy will help us either to survive the dangerous situation or to escape from the dangerous situation. This survive the dangerous situation is what we mean by fight response. Fight response. Escape from the dangerous situation is called flight response. Escape, flight response. Flight response. So we can have either fight response or flight response, and both will help us to survive, for our survival. So whenever we are faced with the dangerous object or dangerous situations, our body will respond, naturally responds to with a burst of energy that will enable us to survive the dangerous situation, that is called fight response, or escape from the dangerous situation, that is called flight response. So this is what we understand by survival stress, the common one, fight or flight response. It's enough that you remember this expression, fight or flight response. Both will help us to survive. Second one is called internal stress. By internal stress, we understand worrying about things we can do nothing about. Internal stress. That is the second common source of stress. The first one is survival stress, the second one is internal stress. Internal stress. Internal, second one. Internal stress. Internal stress. What is this internal stress? Worrying about things we can do nothing about, or worrying for no reason at all. That is internal stress. There are certain things about which we can do nothing, and we keep on worrying about that something which we are not able to do anything about. That becomes an internal stress. Worrying about things we can do nothing about. Worrying about things. Worrying about things we can do nothing about. Then why to worry? We can do nothing about. Nothing about. Still we worry. That puts us under stress. That is called internal stress. Worrying about things we can do nothing about, or worrying for no reason at all. It is one thing. Worrying about things that can do nothing about, or worrying for no reason at all. All the time worrying about something or the other, even without any reason. Worrying for no reason at all. Some people get so used for worrying that they keep on worrying even without reason. Or their reason will be, or their worry will be what to worry about. That becomes their worry. I don't have anything to worry about. Or they think they should always have something to worry about. So, worrying for no reason at all. That is internal stress. Worrying for no reason at all. Worrying about things we can do nothing about. There are some things which we cannot do anything, but still we worry about them. That becomes internal stress. Or worrying for no reason at all. Without any reason, the person keeps on worrying. So that also becomes internal stress. Or placing ourselves in situations we know will cause us stress. Or placing in a stressful situations. Placing ourselves in stressful situations. We know this situation will cause me stress. Still we try to be part of that situation. That becomes internal stress. Placing ourselves in stressful situations. Stressful situations. Placing ourselves in stressful situations. That is a third understanding. Our internal stress is when people make themselves stressed. Here people make themselves stressed. They are the cause for their stress. People make themselves stress. People make themselves stressed. So when I make myself stressed, or when people make themselves stressed, it becomes an internal stress. And it is one of the most important kinds of stress to understand and manage, because many people suffer with this internal stress. So it becomes an important common source of stress. There are some people who even look for stressful situations and feel stress about things that are not stressful. So some people even look for stressful situations. Some even look for stressful situations. Because they get so habituated to be in a stressful situation. So when they don't have a stressful situation, they even look for stressful situations. Some even look for stressful situations. They even look for stressful situations and feel stress about things that are not stressful. That is another. They feel stressful about the situations which are not really stressful. Even the slight things, normal things also will look stressful for them. They even feel stressful. They even feel stressful or stress about things that are not stressful. They even feel stressful about things which are not really stressful. Things which are not really stressful, which are not really stressful. So that is the strange thing about them. So some even look for stressful situations, or they even feel stressful about things which are not really stressful. For a normal person, they do not look like stressful situation. But these people, they feel that they are under stress. But in reality, they are not stressful situations at all. So that is internal stress. Worrying about things we can do nothing about, or worrying for no reason at all. I have no reason to worry, still I keep worrying about something or the other. Or placing oneself or ourselves in stressful situation, knowing too well that this situation might create stress or might put me under stress, still I place myself in such situations. That comes under this internal stress. or people make themselves stressed without any reasons, or some even look for stressful situations, or they even feel stressful about things which are not really stressful. So because they get so habituated about stress, but anything and everything looks stressful for them. Even the normal day to day everyday happening also might become stressful for such people. So that is internal stress. So one of the most important kinds of stress to understand and to manage, because many people have this internal stress. And thirdly, we have environmental stress. So internal stress basically means worrying about things which we do not have, or which we cannot do anything about. For example, I failed in the examination. I can do nothing about it now. So what is the use of worrying about it? Okay, there may be a possibility for us to attempt again, second attempt to pass again. That is the only thing that we can do. But I have already failed and I can do nothing about it. But still I keep worrying about it. For example. There are many things like that. We keep worrying about things about which we have no control. That is basically internal stress. And thirdly is another common stress, common source of stress is environmental stress. Environmental stress. Third one. Environmental stress. Environmental stress. That is the third common source of stress. This is a response to things around us that cause stress. Noise, crowd, pressure from the work or family, anything, any response to the things or people or events around us that form part of this environmental stress. And identifying these environmental stresses and learning to avoid them or to deal with them will help us to lower our stress level. So it's a very simple thing. Environmental stress, response to things around us. That is environmental response to things around us. Response to things around us that cause stress. Response to things around us that cause stress. That cause stress. So response to things around us that cause stress. That response, things could be, sometimes could be noise, some noise, or it could be crowd, or it could be pressures, pressure in the family, school, workplace, institute, so many pressures that all come under this environmental stress. Institutes, organizations. Okay, there are so many pressures, mainly pressures. So response to things around us that cause stress. What are the things that put us in a stressful situation or that lead us towards stress? That is, could be a noise, some kind of crowds, mainly these pressures, environmental pressures, family pressure, pressure in the school, the workplace, institute, organization, anything that happens in the society, anything that happens in our environment which lead us towards stress can be regarded as environmental stress. It is also one of the common source of stress. So we have seen three. One is survival stress, secondly we have seen internal stress, and third one is environmental stress. And finally we have the other important one, that is fatigue and overwork. That is another common source of stress. Fatigue and overwork. Tiredness, fatigue, mental tiredness, physical tiredness that leads us towards stress. Fatigue and overwork. Fatigue and overwork. It's called burnout. People There will be burnout experience, overwork, fatigue and overwork. So this kind of stress builds up over a long time and can take a hard toll on our bodies. So it keeps building up over a long time and it can take a hard toll on our bodies. This can be caused by working too much or too hard, mainly because of the work. Working too much, working too hard. When we work too much, we all have to work hard, no doubt about it, but when we work too much or when we work too hard, working too much or working too hard, more than what we can, too hard. We need to give our utmost best. And when we want to give even more than that, squeezing ourselves, squeezing the energy that we have or the resources that are available, or when the demand exceeds the resources, it becomes fatigue or it becomes stressful for the person. The person becomes mentally tired. The person becomes physically tired, does not have energy to cope up with life. So it can be caused by working too much or working too hard. It can be also caused by not knowing how to manage our time well or how to take time out for rest and relaxation. So another important reason for this fatigue is lack of time management. Keep on working without having proper time management skills. Lack of time management. The person who knows how to manage the time properly will be easily or realistically able to deal with stressful situations. So it can be caused by not knowing how to manage, lack of time management skills. I do not know how to handle my time properly, so naturally I will be under stress. Or how to take time out for rest and relaxation. These people do not know how to rest and how to relax, how to give time for relaxation and refreshment. So such people will be under stress. So not knowing how to take time out for rest and relaxation, or lack of time for rest and relaxation, very important for the person. For rest and relaxation, for rest, we all need to rest, we all need to relax. Rest and relaxation. If we don't have this rest and relaxation, then our stress level will increase. So lack of time management skills is one of the cause for this fatigue and overwork. Becomes a common source of stress. And lack of time for rest and relaxation, or lack of time for renewal and refreshment. We need to renew ourselves from time to time, and we need to refresh ourselves. Refreshment. Renewal, refreshment, rest and relaxation, or in other words, revival and recreation. Recreation. We need to revive our lives, and we need to have some recreation, have some fun, have some lighter moments. So these people, they have this lack of time management skills and lack of time for rest and relaxation, renewal and refreshment, revival and recreation. So when we don't have this rest and relaxation, renewal and refreshment and revival and recreation, we find ourselves under stressful situation, or we will not have energy, psychic energy or internal energy or bodily energy and resources to cope up with the stress. So this can be one of the hardest kinds of stress to avoid, because many people feel this is out of their control. So many keep saying it is not in my hands. I have a lot of things to do, lot of work to do, lot of assignments to complete, lot of deadlines to meet with. So we always find excuses and reasons, and we don't have proper time management skills, and we don't take time for rest and relaxation. The person thinks it's a waste of time to have rest, relaxation, renewal, refreshment, revival and recreation. The person thinks it is a waste of time because I have a lot of things to do. So that's why this becomes the hardest kind of stress to avoid. because that is our mindset that we don't have time, or we do not know how to manage our time, we do not know how to relax and to take time for rest and relaxation. So with this, we shall conclude this section, common source of stress. So basically there are 4: internal survival stress, internal stress, environmental stress, fourth one is fatigue and overwork. In the next lesson we shall see the coping strategies, or how to cope with stress. Thank you.